Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So great to see all of you coming in. I'm Pamela Bursler. I'm tonight's instructor. We have an amazing team here to answer your questions and lead this really fun workshop on garden design. Very excited to be, it's our first garden design class with Valley Water, so we're quite excited about it. But in the next few minutes, while we're getting it all together, I want to encourage you to go into the chat and say hello to us. Tell us where you're zooming in from this evening. I will try to write something, but I can't write and talk at the same time. So I'm going to ask Andrea maybe to say hello and introduce herself in the spotlight.
Oh, hello everyone. My name's Andrea Doonan. I am a landscape designer, certified arborist, artist, and G3 instructor here in San Diego. I actually was born and raised in the Bay Area though, so I can answer questions from all edges of California. So actually born in El Camino Hospital, Mountain View. So yeah, I'm pretty familiar with where you guys are hailing from. So I'm just going to pop that in. We're excited to talk about the design and watershed approach, and I'll be in the Q&A all day today or all evening today. If you have any questions, just try and stump me. And I believe Nick is joining us as well in the Q&A, correct?
Yes. Yes, Nicholas.
Two for one here today, so take advantage of us. We'll be here, and we're pros. So.
Wonderful. Look at this. We have Los Altos. Hi, Mimi. And San Jose, Bishop, another San Jose, Santa Clara. See how easy it is to say hi to us, and it makes us all feel so good. We'll give you a little shout out to Saratoga. Okay. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to spend. This is a little bit more workshop than we usually do. It will come in, we'll finish up right around 7:30. But I'm going to leave some time for a couple questions at the end. But really, the cool thing about our workshops, I think, is that you have this landscape expertise for the whole workshop behind the scenes, answering questions in real time, and you can actually add into the conversation if you'd like. And so it's really interesting. You might know of a resource or know where to get, something, locate something in a nursery or get mulch or whatever. And you can share that with everybody else who's on the webinar tonight. So we really appreciate it. Thank you, Mary, for saying hi from San Jose. Very much appreciated. So we will start in just 1 minute. We're going to let people kind of come in, and tonight's workshop is being recorded so that you can watch it again in the comfort of your own home. Grab that last glass of wine. It's Thursday night. I can say that, right? Whatever you need to relax and listen to a garden design webinar, grab it because we're going to start in about 30 seconds. Yeah. Okay, here we go. And people are coming in, which is wonderful. Welcome everybody who's coming in. You're in the right place for the garden design workshop. And I'm going to ask Andrea to just change the chat for all of you to close it out and open up the Q&A, and we're going to start the show. Well, as I mentioned, and hopefully you all are in the right place, because tonight is the garden design workshop. We're going to go from grass to garden tonight. in just a couple of easy steps. I am Pamela Bursler, tonight's instructor from G3 Green Gardens Group, and I want to make sure that you all are able to hear and understand the webinar. We are going to be answering questions in real time behind the scenes, and we will be answering them in 3 languages. We have Spanish, Mandarin, and Vietnamese. And you can select a different room than the English speaking room in order to hear the interpretation by clicking on that little globe icon at the bottom of your screen, and make sure that you mute original audio, and that will allow you to hear the entire presentation in the language of your choice. And also, we will be translating the Q&A into all these languages. So we look forward to your asking questions. Please don't feel constrained in any way. Well, I really want to give a big shout out to Valley Water for hosting this and actually a whole series of workshops, which we're really enjoying. And I'm going to turn it over to Valley Water to, oh, I have one more thing to say before I turn it over. Sorry, Nicholas. The one more thing to say is that in the next 24 hours, you are going to be receiving an email from Zoom. It is going to come to the email address that you used to sign up for the webinar. So the email is going to include a whole bunch of resources. It will include this PDF, a PDF of this book, which is specifically for Valley Water. And what's interesting about it is a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is actually embedded in this book. So it's a really good guidebook to kind of go along with the webinar. And now I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Nicholas, or is it to you, Santa? Oh,
It's
sorry.
to me. That's all good. Hi, everyone. I'm Sana. I'm a water conservation specialist here at Valley Water. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. I'm super excited for today's webinar. But before we get into that, I'm going to do just a brief overview of the water conservation programs we have here at Valley Water that Santa Clara County residents can utilize. Okay, so why is water conservation important? So one of the main reasons that we give to customers when we talk to them about it is that it's economical. We all pay water bills, and the less water you use, the less you're going to pay. Valley Water actually counts water conserved as an actual supply of water. And the reason for this is that every gallon of water that we save, we don't have to export and we don't have to rely from our groundwater supply on. And another big reason is that a lot of the energy that we use here in California is to move water across the state. So the less we do that, the less energy we use, the less greenhouse gas emissions we put out, and the more we're able to be resourceful. Next slide, please. So here's a quick graphic. It shows you the water use here that we have in Santa Clara County. As you can see, 55% of the water that we use in the county is residential, and out of that, half of that is outdoor and half of that is indoor. The graphic to the right is a breakdown of that indoor water use, and this is stuff that you use every day, right? So showers, faucets, toilets, clothing machine, clothes washers. And a lot of these, you can save water by making behavioral changes or implementing water efficient technologies. So all that good stuff, and I'll be covering some of that in the upcoming slides. Okay,
Oh,
that's okay.
Did I go
That's
too
okay.
fast?
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Okay, so some programs that we offer here at Valley Water, we have specifically indoor conservation programs and outdoor conservation programs. For indoor conservation, we have DIY kits that you can use to see how efficient your fixtures are. We have a free fixture replacement program for commercial and business institutions here in Santa Clara County. We have sub-meter rebates, and we have water efficiency technology rebates for bigger commercial sites. Outdoor conservation, we have tons of rebates. We have landscape rebates, we have irrigation equipment rebates. We have one gray water rebate to reuse water from laundry machines to the landscape. We have an agriculture mobile lab program for agriculture sites in the county, and we even do outdoor surveys. So I'll talk more about some of these in the next upcoming slides. All right. Okay, a very quick, easy thing that you can do today, it's visit our online shopping cart. So we have a lot of materials on there that you can get for free if you're in Santa Clara County. So you can get an indoor survey kit, and this will help you determine how efficient your shower heads are or your faucets. And using the information you get from that kit, you can order shower heads, toilet flappers, leak detection tablets, aerators, hose nozzles. We also have tons of literature on there, things like plumbing guides and that guidelines that Pamela showed in the beginning. So again, if you're in the county, even if you're in an apartment, you can order these items completely free. You don't have to pay shipping. Put in your address, put in your request, and you'll get these mailed to you. Next slide. So I mentioned surveys. So we have outdoor surveys for both smaller sites and larger sites. So for both of these, we have irrigation professionals that will come out to your site. They'll turn on your irrigation. They'll look for leaks, areas that you can improve, recommend some upgrades, and potentially point you to some of the programs that we have that you can utilize if there are areas for improvement. So we have a watershed-wise outdoor survey for residential or small commercial sites. And then anything that's over half an acre, we have a large landscape program. So similar programs, it's just different depending on how big your site is. Okay, you can find a link for those surveys on our website that I just mentioned. Okay. Our most popular program is our landscape rebate program. We offer tons of rebates for things like converting your lawn, putting in more efficient sprinklers, or taking your sprinklers out and putting in inline drip irrigation. We offer $3,000 for up to $3,000 for residential sites, and then up to $100,000 for commercial or multifamily sites. One of our most popular parts of the rebate program is the landscape conversion program. So we offer a base rebate of $2 per square foot for removing high water use landscape like grass or swimming pools and putting in water efficient plants and mulch and things like that. We launched a new kind of program to go along with this program called the Landscape Design Assistance Program. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but I also want to quickly plug our lawn to mulch rebate. And this is just like the landscape conversion rebate, except it's for bigger sites. And for this one, you don't need to put in plants. It's just removing lawn, putting in mulch. And so that base rebate is $2, but we cost share with certain retailers and cities in our area. So it might be higher where you are, but make sure you check out our website for that information. So our landscape design assistance program, this we launched last year, and a question that we get really frequently from our landscape conversion participants is like, where do I start? I don't know anything. What plants do I put in? What works with my landscape? Things like that. So this is a program we introduced where we have a list of qualifying designers, and customers can receive a 1 to 2 hour design consultation with this designer. So the designer will come out, they'll look at your landscape, they'll talk to you about plants that might work for your site, what conditions are on your site that could inform what you put there. So participants will pay the designer $200 at the time of the consultation, and you'll keep that receipt. And once you finish your lawn conversion project, you'll submit that receipt and we will reimburse you. So on top of that lawn conversion rebate, we have tons of designers. We have 15 designers who speak 5 different languages, and they all have different expertises and different like certifications. And you can see all this on your website and pick a designer that works best for you. A big disclaimer about this program is that it's not going to be a fully laid out professional design that you can just hand to a contractor. It's more of a conversation and a place to start with a designer so you know what could be possible on your site. Next slide, please. Okay, so these, I'm just plugging some really cool design resources that you can find online. We have multiple kind of put together designs like the one you see on the right on our website, South Bay Green Gardens. So as you can see, it tells you this is something that could work for an edible garden, and these are some plants that could work. And another cool planner, you'll see the picture on the bottom of that slide, is from the California Native Plant Society. This is a Bay Area garden planner. It's the same kind of deal. You put in information like what you want to prioritize in your garden, how much sun you get or shade you get, and it'll spit out a little design and some plant recommendations. And again, like to plug the landscape guidelines. These are very detailed and a great place to start. And I've heard multiple like landscapers in our areas that even use this landscape guideline. So definitely take a look at those. Okay, more things at our landscape rebate program. I mentioned we have irrigation equipment. So inline drip irrigation, high efficiency nozzles for sprinklers, flow sensors, hydrometers, irrigation controllers, rain sensors. So all of these have different amounts that you can be rebated for. You can find all this in our website. One more element that we have is rainwater capture rebates. So rain barrels, cisterns, rain gardens, all things that you can implement in your landscape along with lawn conversions, and you can get a rebate on top of just that, you know, taking out your lawn and putting in plants. Next slide. And a really cool program that we have is a gray water laundry to landscape rebate. This, like I mentioned before, it's for clothes washers and for reusing water from your clothes washer and getting it into your landscape. There's no permit for this program. We offer a flat rebate of $200 or $400 depending on what city you're in. And it's a really cool program. So there's lots of information, resources on our website. Next slide. And then lastly, I'll plug our water waste program. So anybody in the county can either email us, call us, or put in a request on our Access Valley Water website for any water waste that you see in the county. So we will have water waste team. They will provide education and resources and give customers tips on how you can reduce water use, and also plug some of our programs. This is not like, you know, a punishment. It's definitely just a sharing of resources. So if you see water waste in the county, definitely be sure to report it on one of our emails or hotlines here. All right, next slide. Okay, I can answer any questions you guys might have. If not, we can get into that webinar. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, that's terrific. And you'll be you have access to the Q&A in the back. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and ask Sana there. And and you can certainly reach them at this information. I just want to say that I'm going back. I mean, look at that picture of the water sprouting up. I think this is one of the best pictures I've ever seen, and everybody's smiling. That's the part that's very funny, but I love it. Glad we caught those leaks. All right, well, everybody, let's get into the main event here of learning how to create a watershed-wise design. We're going to start with a little bit of a background on what being watershed-wise is all about. And then we'll go into how to make a site analysis, talk a little bit about how do we actually capture rainwater, how do we place a catchment area on our landscape to make sure that every landscape really is holding on to rainwater. How do we develop that plant palette, and then where do we put those plants? And then finally, what are some design considerations to make this thing really gorgeous? So let's start with the watershed-wise design. Now, it's important to understand that pretty much everything we talk about comes back to this concept of your home being a natural watershed. But even though we say that, what does it mean? Well, essentially, what we are going to be doing is creating a landscape that mimics a watershed, and a watershed is an area where all the water that falls on it or is under it drains to the same place. And the cool thing about a natural watershed is when the water comes from the sky in whatever form, fog, precipitation, even snow, it will be intercepted by plant material before it hits the ground. And that slows it down. And so then when it comes down onto the ground, a process called infiltration takes place where the water is actually going into the soil, filling up the root zone of the plants. Gravity is working on that water and it's pulling it down through the soil profile, percolating it down into water tables in some cases where the water table is able to receive water. But also there are forces, capillary action and so forth that are also working on the water, moving it through the landscape, both on top where it's moving through plant material and also down in the soil. And it starts to move kind of horizontally and even back up to the surface, filling all the pore space, making all this water available to all the plant material. And eventually, that water makes its way to the local waterway. So it could be a creek, a river, a lake, or ultimately the ocean. And then when the sun comes back out, there's a process called evapotranspiration. And this is essentially the transfer of water from the soil back up into the atmosphere to form clouds. And this is actually intermediated by plants. So the plants begin to draw that water out of the soil to cool themselves down and put it into the atmosphere. And as atmospheric water, it condenses and comes back down as rain. Now, I just want to say something really super cool about this is that when plants are in healthy soil, they're able to attach little microbes onto these water droplets that they're atomizing. And those microbes are able to condense water at a lower altitude than any other type of particulate. So pollen and pollution and dust and stuff like that, that all will ultimately condense water, but at a much higher altitude. At the lower altitudes, we have microbes doing this work. And so when we have places that have lots of plants in them, those microbes are able to condense water and bring it back to the soil pretty much in the same zone as where it originally came out of, and it comes back as gentle rain. So that's what's happening in a natural watershed. And we want to try to make our own homes a mini watershed. And that means that we're going to start to evaluate our property and figure out where is the water falling on, the top of the property. That's usually the roof. And where is the water running off the property into the street, which if you think about it, in a rainstorm, a street becomes a creek, really. So the difference between where it falls originally and where it leaves, all of that area is yours to make changes to or to influence. And so in order to influence it, in order to create a more natural watershed type of situation, we want you to employ the 4 principles of the watershed approach. And these are, first, we grow healthy living soil that acts like a sponge. Really important. A sponge holds on to water, soil sponge holds on to water when times are dry, and it releases it slowly so there's no erosion, no flooding when times are wet. And then we also want you to select climate appropriate plants. And the most climate appropriate plants are those local California native plants. That's the best choice. There are others, but as long as they are climate appropriate, we're in the right, go in the right direction. The third principle is to capture rainwater and use it as a resource. And it's to passively capture water, which means holding it on the landscape. So we can use devices like rain barrels and so forth, but we really want to make sure it's in the landscape for the plants at the roots of the plants. And then finally, when we use supplemental irrigation, we make sure that it's highly efficient, meaning the system is designed, installed, and maintained properly, and we're only applying water when it's necessary. So we know when the plants need more water. We're not applying water just because it's a Tuesday. And those are the 4 principles of the watershed approach, and we are going to now bring them into the concept of landscape design and use these to create a really beautiful functioning landscape. And then we'll also talk about aesthetics as well. So first we need to start with site analysis. Now I'm wondering, we're going to run a little poll here. How many of you actually created a base plan before you came to the class tonight? Now, don't worry, we won't share your names. Let's, can we put up the poll? Maybe. There we go. All right. So did any of you create base plans? It's okay if you didn't, or have a base plan, or maybe you already took the advantage of the garden assistance and you have you have an idea of what your plan is looking like. Now, while we're doing this, I don't know if the comments that are happening in chat are essentially links and things like that that are coming out to you or not. I do want to remind you that we have the Q&A open. So if you click on the Q&A button at the top or bottom of your screen, you can actually open it up and see what questions people are asking. You can add on to those questions, and we will be translating those questions into Spanish, Vietnamese, and Mandarin. And so go ahead and ask questions. All right, well, let's share the results. It looks like most of you did not make a base plan. There are some of you that do have one. It's okay either way. We're going to talk a little bit about both ideas so we can stop sharing and move on. So the key thing about making a base plan is and I recommend that you use a graph paper like what you see here. This is a 1/4 inch graph paper. The little squares are a 1/4 inch wide. And this allows you to do what's called 1/4 inch scale. Now, if your property is quite large, you might need a couple of these sheets, taped together. And I recommend that when you're going through the design process that you kind of break your landscape up into various areas that you can use this kind of paper on. So maybe the backyard separate from the front and the side separate from the front. You can tape it all together when you're done. So it's okay, but this allows you to really focus on particular areas. And so here we have a front yard. And what we've done here is we're allowing each of those squares to equal 1 foot of distance. I usually go on to, I use a satellite view of of like a search engine. I go in, I put my address in, and I look at the satellite view. And there are a lot of tools online now that will actually allow you to not only see what your property looks like, what the boundaries are, what the residence on the property looks like, if there are any trees, where they're located. You also, by using, I think it's Google Earth, you could use a tool to measure right there on the screen. It's good to ground truth your information by going out with a tape measure or a rolling tape and get the basics. You want to know, where are the big things? Where's the driveway? Where's the sidewalk? The approximate view of the home. I like to put the front door indicated on the plan. I also usually like to put windows. There aren't windows on this plan, but it's kind of helpful sometimes in terms of design. So using 1 square equal 1 foot, you lay out your plan on this graph paper. And there's one thing that I want to make sure you put on it, and that is this arrow, which is circled. This is the north arrow. And right now, smartphones, pretty much all smartphones have a little compass in them, and you can actually use your smartphone in order to get, or compass, to get what the north is. You want to indicate that on your plan because it's going to give you information about where the shadows are going to be cast, where, some of the structures are going to create shade and so forth. And once you have what we call the base plan, which is this simple plan, make a lot of copies of it. I mean, really, like 15 copies, because you are going to start to doodle on this plan and put more information on it. And I am telling you, this is how landscape designers work. We work in layers. So we start with the base plan and then we start to add things onto that. And one of the first things we add is what we call microclimates. Microclimates are determined really by, sitting in your yard and kind of really observing your property. You will notice that there are places that are in shade all the time. In this case, the neighbor's tree is casting a shadow. You'll notice you have strong sun, let's say on the east side, strong morning sun and very strong afternoon sun. You're very exposed, let's say on the west side. And maybe as in this case, you have a wall that's against a driveway where there's all this reflected heat. It's very, very hot right there. Maybe you have some places where water pools. This is all the kind of stuff that you want to indicate on your microclimate layer, because you're going to come back to this microclimate layer when you're starting to lay out your plants. And really, you can't have too much information on this. So go for it and really observe what's happening. Then on another sheet of paper, you're going to start thinking about what happens to water on your site. Now, you may end up with 2 or 3 or 4 different layers all pertaining to water. But this first one is really getting you oriented to what kind of slope do you have? Where does water go when it comes off your roof or comes off your driveway? You can even be observing perhaps what's happening to irrigation. Is there a place where things pool? Are there wet spots? Indicate all of that on your water plan. Indicate where your downspouts are and start to think about, where would it run once it hits the ground? What happens to it? Where does it run to? That becomes your first layer of your water plan. And, while you're in one of those programs where you're able to look at a sort of satellite or a bird's eye view of your property, you want to take that opportunity to start to look at the roof. Your roof is going to be generating the water that you're going to capture in your landscape, or most of the water anyway. And so you want to try to identify different parts of the roof and also create a square footage of the roof. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind is that from a bird's eye view, this is all pretty flat. It doesn't matter if it's a pitched roof or a flat roof. You're just looking at the length times the width. So that's the square footage of the roof. There may be different types of roof surface or different pitches and so forth on the roof, which can later on, you can kind of break those sections out of the overall roof area if you really want to get precise about where you're putting the water that comes off it. But honestly, this just overall view of the length times the width is going to give you a very good idea of how much water you could capture off of your roof. You also want to identify where your downspouts are and what portions of the roof are actually contributing to each of those downspouts. Now, once you get the book that we are going to be sending you as a PDF, you will find a couple of little tests that you can conduct on your site, which are going to tell you more about your soil and conditions on the site. And one of them is this condition of compaction. The question is, do you have a brick or do you have a sponge in your landscape? I am willing to bet that most of you either have a brick or a sieve, and that you're going to have to work on making a sponge. But the way that you determine that is actually outlined extensively in the book. So I encourage you to do a compaction test and figure out, where are places that are compacted or that are super fast draining, so that you can have that in mind as you're setting up your rainwater capture system. And that is the next section. We're going to capture rain on our site. And the question first is, how much water could you collect from the roof, let's say? The roof is the hard surface that is easiest to collect water from, but the calculations we're about to go through work for any hard surface. It could be a patio, it could be a driveway or a walkway. It's all the same type of calculation. It's just your roof is a pretty big surface and you really hope it's not letting water through it. That water is running off of it. So the calculation that we use is pretty simple. It's rainfall, the number of inches that you want to consider, times the square foot of the roof, times 0.62. And this is going to tell you how many gallons you can actually capture off of your roof. And remember that that square footage is just the length times the width of the roof surface. Now, if you start to think about this as just 1 inch of rain, so don't get ahead of yourself. Let's just start with 1 inch of rain. That is called the first flush. It's the most polluted rain that you really do want to hold on your landscape. So 1 inch of rain on a 1,000 square foot roof yields 620 gallons of water. If you think about it, in a rain season that has 10 inches of rain, that's more than 6,000 gallons of water. If you put all that in your landscape, you could have as much as a 1,500 square foot landscape with plenty of water to get it through the summer. So I'm going to show you how you put it into the landscape, because you definitely want to hold on to it. And that's the question is, where would you store 620 gallons? And the first thing that comes to mind is a rain barrel. And that's a great thing. You're thinking in the right direction. But the challenge is that rain barrels are only able to hold maybe 55 or 75 gallons of water. You need quite a few of them to store that whole 620 gallons. So rain barrels actually become slowing devices. That's their most important role. And we'll talk about that in a second. It turns out that the soil sponge, the landscape itself, filled with plants, covered with mulch, is going to hold far more water than any rain barrel or any cistern ever could, and it can all be done for free. So this is really where we're going to focus our energy. Now, as we said, 1 inch of rain off of a 1,000 square foot roof creates, let's say, 600 gallons. I'm just rounding down to make it easy. Well, if that's the case, for every 1,000 square foot of roof that you have, you only need 150 square feet of landscape area with a little depression in it that's about 6 inches deep to capture all that water. So 150 square feet is a pretty small area, but what does it look like? Oh, well, actually, I got a little ahead of myself. So how do you determine how much water is coming down each of these downspouts? So what you're going to do is go back to your water plan, that first level, right, that talked about where water moves across your landscape. And now you're going to formalize it a little bit and really identify where your downspouts are. You may even go back to looking at your roof area and figuring out what portion of the roof is contributing to each of these downspouts. And the reason that you would take that little bit of an extra step is because it's going to be a smaller area than the whole landscape. And that means that the catchment area to grab that water can be a lot smaller. So you don't need a massive catchment area if you're only grabbing the water from one downspout. You also want to identify, is the water coming down the downspout and going into the landscape? Or is it going on to another hard surface like a driveway? There are going to be two different strategies for dealing with each of those situations. Okay, so once you know where the downspouts are, you know what the roof area is and what is contributing to each of the downspouts. Now you want to try to determine what is the square footage of your basin and where are you going to place that basin. So the thing that I want to just say right up front is that this catchment of water in the landscape is very easy to do. It can be done everywhere. It's a very, very shallow depression, so it's not something that is a big permitted project. But you want to have some common sense. And one of those things is you want to keep the water away from the foundation of the house. And you also want to do something called setbacks. So the setbacks are essentially creating a border in the landscape that keeps your catchment area away from sidewalks, away from foundations of your house, away from the property line of your neighbor. And in general, we want to be 3 to 5 feet away from the sidewalk or a walkway. We want to be the same distance from the property line and about 5 to 10 feet away from the house. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is that when we create our depression where we're digging out the soil, we're going to keep all that soil on the property. And we're going to use it to create what's called a berm. So the basin is the depression, the berm is a raised area that's near the depression. And we're not carting in any soil, we're not removing any soil. So this is what my plan would look like with my setbacks on it. You can see I'm set back 5 to 10 feet from the foundation of the house and 3 to 5 feet from the sidewalk and the neighbors and the walkway. And this is telling me that I could set my 150 square foot area 6 inches deep inside of those setbacks. So that's the area that I have to work with for making my catchment area. And if we start with something that's 150 square feet, 6 inches deep, you know, what the heck does that look like? Well, the good news is it can look like anything. It doesn't have to be a square. It doesn't have to be a circle. It doesn't have to be a long, skinny thing. The one at the bottom, 2 by 75 feet, that's kind of what a dry creek would look like, right? It would meander around and it would be kind of narrow and long. It could be just a squiggly thing that is approximately 150 square feet. It's okay. You don't need to be absolutely precise. It's going to work either, you know, whether you're precise or not. And so, yeah, it's pretty easy once you start to think outside the box. Now, what happens if you have some kind of limitation that is making your setback area a lot smaller? So the limitation that we have here is that there's a big tree in the front yard, and we definitely don't want to have our catchment area under the canopy of the tree. We want to stay outside the drip line of the tree. And so this is making our area where we could possibly put a rain garden or a basin a lot smaller. What do? Well, it's possible to have the same amount of catchment by just making it a little bit deeper. I want to say we don't really ever want to go more than 12 inches deep. That's kind of the limit. And if you think about that, that is about the depth of a 1 gallon container that you would have for a plant. So 12 inches is really as deep as we want to go. And what this is making us do, because the area is smaller, is we are having to make the square footage of our basin smaller, and so it needs to be deeper in order to hold the same amount of water as that 150 square foot 6 inches deep translates into 75 square foot 12 inches deep. They are equivalent. And so as long as we are just thinking about staying within the parameters, not going too deep, we can really have a successful capture area. And I want you to remember also that you want to try to have a basin that has an inlet area where the water is able to come into it. I kind of call it the top of the basin. And then I like to make sure that there's a slightly lower area on one side of the basin that allows the water to escape if this rain garden fills up. And the reason that we're thinking about this is because we don't want the basin to fill up so much and not have the outlet and somehow have that water flow back toward the house or back even up a pipe. I mean, we just don't want that to happen. We want it always to be, if it's moving, we want it to be moving away from the foundation. We want to maybe into another part of the landscape, but we ensure that by creating a slightly lower area in one part of the basin. Now, we're going to actually take a little poll. Not quite yet, but you're going to pick the rain garden that you want for the design that we're making tonight. So the first placement is a, kind of rectangular rain garden. And can you see these kind of mauvey, sorry, there's a little bit of noise here. They're these kind of mauvey, boy, they look like seals to me, but blobs. What are they? Well, they are indicating the berms. So remember, when we excavate the 6 inches of this rain garden, we are going to actually keep that soil on site, and we're using it to mound up and create these berms. So in this case, we have this rectangular area, but we could also turn that into an oval area and maybe make it a little bit more of an enclosed space by putting the berms in such a way that they are shielding us from our neighbors and from the sidewalk. I like to imagine that there's a window in the house that's looking out over this little basin. And so that's another approach. And then we have an approach that we sometimes call the cascades, which is essentially saying it doesn't have to just be one basin. It can be multiple basins. You can move the water around the landscape as much as you have room for, and it's not a problem. So in this particular case, we have 2 basins, the square footage of which is the same as those others. And we're using the berms to essentially allow that water to move around. Now, in this picture, we also have attention being paid to the other downspout on the other side of the building. Now, that downspout was going on to the driveway, but because we put a rain barrel there, we can now redirect the water that goes into the rain barrel into the landscape. So we can use a hose at the top of the rain barrel to move that water into an area that doesn't have concrete or an impermeable surface on it, and we can actually capture that rainwater too. The rain barrel is serving as a slowing device in this case, and when the rainy season is over, we take that hose off the top and we put it on the bottom, and we use the water that's in the rain barrel. So of these 3 different basins, which one would you like to see in your garden tonight? It's always fun to see where this turns out. You don't have to think about it too much, just pick something. Okay, well, let's go ahead and end this poll and share the results. It looks to me like it's the 2 pools. It's the Cascades, which I'm not surprised about. It's my personal favorite too, and maybe I steered you in that direction. I don't know. But they're all good. And the Cascades are definitely a way to go. All right, so we're going to stop sharing and move on. Now, the thing is that your basin is an important way to capture rain, but it's even more important to think about all of the hardscape on your landscape as permeable and make it so that water can penetrate through it. And we do that by using pavers that are permeable, or flagstone, as you see here, with little gaps between them. And this is allowing water to go into the landscape, even in places where you want to have a hard surface in order to put chairs or tables or so forth. In fact, you can actually even do this to your driveway. You want to try to find ways to sink it into the ground, sink the water into the ground. The one on the left has planting areas in between the large slabs that are poured there. And it even has a area right before the apron that has been cut out to allow any water that runs off the driveway to go into it. The one on the right actually has a cutout area in between, in between the two tracks. Your tires would run along those permeable brick areas, and but the center of it is open and allowing for rain to pass through. Okay, let's start to develop a plant palette now that we have our rain garden in place. And what the heck is that going to look like? Oh, that's the landscape I have in my background. That's funny. That's what it looks like. Well, here's the thing. Your garden can look like anything. It doesn't have to be, I want to point out here, this rain garden is right here in the middle. It's one of the ovals. And you'll notice it's not filled up with stones. It's planted. There are rocks here that are doing a little bit of retaining and kind of slowing things down, but it's planted. Does not have to be filled with rock. It can be done in very small spaces like this one, where you see the rain chain. There's a little rain garden there that actually is a cascade that spills over into the front part of the rain garden here. You can't even see it. It's planted. Nothing, and it's only 6 inches deep, so it's very gentle. You can utilize a semi-permeable surface like decomposed granite for walkways, and then make sure that the landscape is sloped so that you're capturing the water. I want to point your eye toward kind of the middle of the screen where there's like a little picket fence, and you see a bunch of rocks there. That's the rain garden that's capturing the water from the little downspout that's on the side of the building behind the chair. So it can be extremely subtle. This does not have to dominate your landscape. The other thing about your landscapes are they can be very green. We have so many evergreen plants that work in our climate. There's no reason for you to think that it has to be, brown and dead or even deserty. It doesn't have to have any of that kind of look. It can look lush and very, very beautiful. In this picture, the reason there's a big circle on it is because that is the rain garden. This is a completely planted basin, and in fact, it continues across the walkway on the other side. All that area that kind of looks like grass, that is actually a carex, and it's just a planted rain garden. And with all the trees and large shrubs, it's extremely lush looking landscape. So when we're selecting plants, we're going to start thinking about them. One of the first things we do is we talk about the form of the plant. Is it, kind of a bushy thing? Is it a tall thing? What is it? And that is going to help us to select the type of plant that we want to use. An example of this form discussion comes with this tree. So here we have two trees that are essentially the same tree. One is a standard, which means that it's a single trunk. It's kind of like a lollipop. And the other one is a multi-trunk. It has more of a kind of umbrella shape, fanned out umbrella. Each one of these trunks is creating a canopy. Same thing, different form. Here are some more trees with different forms. The one on the left is more columnar. It has these leaves that are really tiny, but it's a standard. It's a single trunk, and it has more of a columnar shape, while the one on the right is also a single trunk, but this has a much more open, looks a lot more like the multi-trunk type of tree, much more open shape. They're both great trees, but in totally different scenarios. Shrubs, is the shrub a short little blobby thing like the one on the left, or is it a nice tall, neat shrub like the one on the right? They're both shrubs, but they have different forms. And in fact, both of these things are considered shrubs as well. The one on the left is nice and soft and kind of flowy. Sometimes people think that's a grassy thing, or yeah, a grassy thing. And then the one on the right, definitely people think is a grassy thing. We consider this a shrub. But it has that very upright, grassy look to it. So both of them are considered shrubs, totally different looks, different forms. Ground covers, when you hear that term, it essentially means plants that are growing shorter than 2 feet. In general, that's what ground cover is. It's kind of a uniform material. And here we have 3 different kinds. We have a shrub that is growing as a ground cover at the top. We have succulents that are growing as ground covers on the left. And we have a tender perennial or actually not tender perennial, but a perennial that is growing as a ground cover on the right. All ground covers, all shorter than 2 feet. Vines are another great form of plant. Usually when you are selecting vines, you also want to be thinking about how are they going to be seen and displayed? Do they need some kind of supporting structure in order to be seen? Now, there are vining shrubs where the vines are very, very stiff and upright. Generally, they need a little support too, but yes, so a vine usually doesn't come, sort of be selected by itself. You usually are also selecting the way you're trellising it or holding it up. Now, the next thing that you want to think about is plant function. Like, what do you want these plants to do in your landscape? So functions can include things like shading or screening. Erosion control is an excellent function on a hillside. Sound buffers, people don't really think about that, but having a layered hedge, for example, maybe even on top of a berm, a nice layered hedge, that can be a very, very effective sound buffer if you're on a busy street or a corner. You also want to be thinking about functions that aren't sort of immediately apparent. So for example, a function of plants could be to enclose an area to, make it more intimate. Or you might want a plant that's walkable. Certainly edible plants have a very specific function, but it could just be about the senses. Like maybe it just smells great, or maybe it's just you like it. So that is a function. Pleasure is definitely something that we want to have in our landscapes. And of course, attracting wildlife is a major function of our plant material. And the best way to attract wildlife is to stick with those local California native plants because they are evolutionarily paired with insects and invertebrates and birds and mammals and all the things that are dependent really on that plant material and the various functions that that plant has in order to survive. And so this is a really great way to have your landscape come alive. Now, I'm going to take you on a very quick tour, so you need to give me 1 second here while I kind of set up my screen and share it again. I'm going to take you on a tour of, well, I'm going to take you on a tour of something. What is it? There we go. Of a website called Calscape. Now, calscape.org is a fantastic website that has been created by the California Native Plant Society. And I'm telling you right now that Andrea, who is answering questions there in the Q&A, and I, and pretty much every designer we know, relies on this website to do our research. And so this is exactly how professionals are figuring out what are the best plants for your area. And once you go to calscape.org, you can actually get to the page where you can put in your zip code, which I've done here, and hit search. I think it already did search, but I'm doing it again. And you can see that what comes up is a list, and there are only 8,500 plants, that are great for your area. So it's not like you're not going to have a choice. But this actually brings up the plants that are appropriate, the native plants that are appropriate for your zip code. I mean, how cool is that? And it allows you to go through and search for, trees and shrubs and all kinds of things, ground covers and perennials. And I mean, really, it's a pretty amazing, it's just an amazing tool. So I am interested in finding, let's see, I really want a tree, but I also really want a kind of ground cover. So I'm going to click on this plant, the yarrow. And what comes up is essentially everything you ever wanted to know about the common California native yarrow. There's a description of it. There is, I love this part. You can see here the form. It's upright and spreading. That sounds like a ground cover to me. It has a fast growth rate. It will bloom in the summertime. It has a white color. The size is really important, as you're going to see when we place the plants. We want to make sure we not only know how tall the plants get, but we also want to know how wide they get. So, these plants can get 18 inches wide. So they're spreading out, but they only get to be about 3 feet tall max. And that's actually probably with the flowers on them. They're a perennial herb. They sometimes go dormant if they don't get any kind of irrigation, but generally in a garden setting, they're evergreen. They're great for bank stabilization. So look at all this, deer resistant. So look at all this great information, but keep scrolling and you find out more. It's a low water use plant. Okay, put it on my list. It can go in full sun, part shade, or deep shade. I mean, really, talk about a versatile plant. And the summer irrigation is at the maximum, 1 time per week. It works in pretty much every soil type. And it, talks about the natural settings. What kind of wildlife does it support? It supports a lot of wildlife. They show you great pictures. I mean, this is really fun to do if you have kids or grandkids. Get them involved in this kind of research that you're doing, because it's a wonderful way to really become invested in your landscape. But here's one of the things that I am really, really, really interested in, and that is the plant communities. This is telling you the particular plant communities that this plant is happy in and or related to. And you can use this to find other plants that are great. And I just want to see, because I think there used to be a other plants list. I don't see it here. But you can just use a search engine with the plant communities in it, and or go and look at other things that that this. I really don't see that. It's too bad. Anyway, I know that there are ways also to start to create communities, on this site. So it's just terrific. And then when you're ready to create your list, oh, I really like this plant, go ahead and add it to your plant list after you've created a little account, and then you can print out your plant list. So talk about an amazing resource. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that and go back to the presentation. And honestly, I'm going to skip through these slides, which I had just as backup. Honestly, that is exactly how we pick plants. So there you have it. Now let's pick the plant palette for this garden. And we're going to start with trees. So the first tree that we're going to look at is Arbutus marina. It's a wonderful tree. Look at that bark color, nice shape, usually in this multi-trunk form. It has actually strawberries that it makes on it. Sometimes this is called strawberry tree, and it makes these strawberries which are edible. They're delicious. A lot of wildlife is attracted to this plant. A tree that is just like so gorgeous. I actually have a little bit of an obsession with this tree. I will stop suddenly sometimes to take pictures of beautiful western sycamores. It's a California native, big sprawling branches, just a beautiful tree. It is a deciduous tree, so it's going to lose its leaves in the wintertime, which is good for placement in the home. You can actually put it on the south side of the house, the west side of the house, and this gives you energy savings. Very fast growing, long lived. It's really a beautiful tree. And then we have the coast live oak. If you have the opportunity to plant an oak in your lifetime, do it. This is what we call a legacy tree. This and the sycamore. They are long-lived, extremely low water requirement. They are a habitat for more than 500, each one is a habitat for more than 500 species of insects alone, and 5,000 different animals and so forth live in or among the California oaks. So if you have a chance to grow one, it's great. And I just want to say that you can plant this from a very small plant, like even from an acorn or really small, and within 5 to 10 years, you have a real tree. So it's okay. You don't have a tree like this, but you have a real tree that you have shade with and you can sit under. So it does grow pretty quickly, especially when young. So let's go ahead and pick which tree. Not like I'm selling it or anything. Go ahead and let's put up the tree poll and see which tree people are going to pick. Okay, well, let's end that poll and see. Oh, a couple more in there under the wire. What have we got? Oh, the strawberry tree won. That is awesome. Okay, so we're going to put a strawberry tree in this garden. All right, we can stop sharing. And now we're going to pick shrubs. And we're going to start with the lemonade berry. What a wonderful California native plant. This makes a great hedge. I mean, really, if you want wildlife in your landscape, this is the way to go. It's evergreen. You can use it on a hillside for erosion control. The fruit is actually edible, makes a delicious lemon drink, like lemony drink, when you put the flowers and fruit in water. It's pretty amazing. California lilac, the Ceanothus concha, is a very large shrub. And it's going to bloom in the winter and early spring. And wow, look at that thing. The foliage is deep green all year round, evergreen. It's a pollinator magnet, really a gorgeous plant. And then we have what I consider kind of utilitarian, a large shrub. This is the Podocarpus henkeli, and it's a perfect thing for a very kind of narrow space. It grows very upright. It tolerates sun and shade. Fast growing for screening purposes. I've had a lot of people ask me if this was bamboo because of those leaves. It actually kind of looks like it, but it's not. It's a shrub. On the smaller shrub side, we're going to look at foothill penstemon or penstemon margarita bop. This is an incredibly tidy little shrub. It is great along a walkway. It really only gets to be about 3 feet wide. And if you space it properly, it's just perfect. Blooms a lot, spring and summer, and it's really tolerant of different watering schedules and garden conditions. Another great one is Mimulus. Well, I never get this right, but Aurantiacus. I think I got it right. Bush monkey flower. Great plant. Another pollinator attractor. It is a wonderful plant for erosion control. It has a very long blooming season. And actually, I have placed this plant on berms And it had, along with the Mimulus cardinalis, which is the red one, and the two of those plants have really played with the basin and the berm, and it becomes a very, very beautiful situation. And here's another wonderful kind of tidy hedge that doesn't really need to be cut, and it's called the coast rosemary or Westringia fruticosa. This particular one is morning light, which is variegated, so it's great in a little bit of a shady scenario. It has a very compact shape, so it's great for a little hedge. And I want you to pick one from each, a large one and one of these smaller ones. So let's get that poll up and we can do it. It's going to take a second more because you're. I love it. You're all participating and doing it very, rapidly. I love it. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll and see where we end up. It looks like this, it looks like this group is really liking the California lilac for the large shrub, and the foothill penstemon, the margarita bop for the small shrub. All right, it's a blue and purple crowd, I can tell. Let's go ahead and stop sharing, and we're going to move on. Next is ground cover. So our first ground cover is a shrub called Bee's Bliss, Salvia Bee's Bliss. It is beautiful, very wide growing, smells amazing, gray-green, evergreen foliage, a wonderful pollinator attractor, just a beautiful, beautiful shrub. We talked about yarrow earlier. This is Achillea millefolium or yarrow. It can actually be mowed and will look a lot like a lawn, which is kind of interesting. It is if you allow it to flower, it's a pollinator, and why wouldn't you? It's a pollinator attractor. There are lots of cultivars of this. If you stick more with the California native ones, you're going to be in the very, very pale pink and white, but it has a lot of other colors as well. Fine feathery leaves, really, really beautiful. And then we have the beach strawberry. And now, don't worry, if you live a little inland, even though it says beach strawberry, it will still be fine in your landscape. The Fragaria chiloensis will tolerate shade. And if you are living a little more inland, you can give it shade and it's perfectly happy. It's a very hardy evergreen, very low ground cover. It does occasionally make fruit, which is wonderful, and you can eat it. And it's blooming pretty much all the time during the summertime. So which of these ground covers would you like to have in your landscape? And really, we're doing this as a poll and so forth, but this is exactly the process that we go through as designers. We're selecting plants, creating a palette, and then selecting, from that, which ones we really like. All right, let's end the poll and take a look. It looks like the yarrow was the winner, but it's a close race with Bee's Bliss. I think if we'd let it go on a little longer, it may have gotten neck and neck. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead and share the results real quick so people can see that. There we go. Yeah, so there you can see it. I'm not lying. And we will go ahead and move on. Now, we're not going to do a poll on this, but something to consider also is what plants are you going to put in your rain garden? And these are plants that can tolerate having their feet wet in the wintertime and very dry in the summertime. Here are three great ones. The first one is the California common rush or juncus. It is a beautiful plant that has this brown seed head on it. And really, when I first started thinking about brown as being a color that I wanted in the landscape, I realized this is a perfect example for, kind of getting over my fear of having brown in the landscape. This really hits the mark with that. We also have Zephranthus. Zephranthus is a bulb. It's a South African bulb, but it's called rain lily. It does beautiful in these basins and rain gardens. It comes in a lot of different colors, and it blooms pretty much in the springtime like this. It's just a fantastic addition to the rain garden for color and so forth. We also have Clinopodium, which is Yerba Buena. This is great for rain gardens and for stepping stones and for all over the place in your garden. Plant a lot of this stuff. It's a native plant, and it is also smells like mint. It's great if you walk on it, and it spreads a lot. So it creates a lot of cover in your basin. And then on the berms, we want plants that don't like wet feet. These are dry feet plants. And those plants are going to be things like the Arctostaphylos or manzanita, or the salvias, which in this case we have Cleveland sage as an example, or the eriogonums, the San Miguel buckwheats and other buckwheats. Those are plants that they definitely don't want to be down in the water, but they want to be nearby with their roots out of that water, able to reach down into it when they're ready to do it. So once we've gotten our palette, we then want to organize it. And I really like to organize my palette in this way. I use the botanical name, and we always use the botanical name for the plants because this is the only way that a nursery knows exactly what we're asking for. We could say something like beach strawberry, and there are a bunch of different things that you could get. So we make sure we have the botanical name. The common name is great for kind of talking amongst us as we design, but botanical name. We make sure we have the height of the plant and the width. The width is really important for placement. We want to know the sun and shade conditions, and also we want to know the water needs. And I like to assign colors to the plants based on water needs. And what you see here is that we have mostly low and moderate water requiring plants. I use the yellow for the low, the blue for the moderate. You can do whatever you want, but this is going to help us to lay out the plants in hydrozones. So where do we put the plants? Well, we're going to start to think about plants being in communities, and we're going to organize them by soil type, by sun exposure, by water need. And by water need and sun exposure are two things that we really want to pay attention to. When we group plants by their water requirements, so all the low water plants together, all the moderates together, all the high water and very lows together, and not mixed up, it enables us to irrigate them properly. So this is called hydrozoning. And in this case, we have a lawn, high water requirement. That's going to be on a separate valve from Mediterranean plants that are low water requirement. And we also want to separate plants by the type of irrigation that we're going to use to irrigate them. So in this case, we have two groups of plants that are both high water requirement, but the lawn is going to be irrigated with spray and the edible garden irrigated with drip. They need to be on separate valve zones. They need to be separated out because we're going to irrigate them differently. And that's really the biggest organizing factor for placing the plants in the landscape. And then the next one is going to be microclimates, which I'll show you in the end. So what are some design considerations that we want to be thinking about? Just to make it pretty, right? Because why do we do this? We want it to be pretty. First is plant in clusters. So we like to think about planting in groups of odd numbers, 3, 5, 7, and more. This is a great design principle, and it can be broken. It is okay to plant in, well, single is an odd number. So like you see here, there's actually a toyon, common name, heteromelus, Latin name. Right here on the right-hand side, it's just one because that thing gets huge. But the rest of the plants are clustered. It is okay to do twos, especially if you are framing a view or you want to lead maybe someone down a path. You can use, just a couple of plants for that. But in general, we stick with the odd number. Repetition is another important thing to do in a garden. Here we have repetition of color and repetition of form. Look at the larger grass that's in the foreground. It's a blue-green color and it has a kind of mounded shape to it. Well, we repeat that with the little tribble, that's going to be hard to translate. The little I don't even know what to call them. They look like animals. The little blue blobs. Those grasses are a lot smaller, but they have a similar shape to the big grass. Also, we've repeated this color throughout the garden. The shrub that is in the middle of the garden is the same color, and we see that color repeated throughout. Focal point. This tree is telling you very clearly, come this way. Walk down this path toward me, please. So does the rock. The rock is basically pointing up into the tree. And one of the things I love about the rock is you can kind of see that birds have sat on that rock. Focal points are really important to lead people around gardens. Be bold when you do a focal point. Don't go small, go big. Now here's a concept called layering, where we are going from short plants to tall plants in order to borrow a view from a neighbor. And what we mean by that is the plants along the walkway are very low growing, but you see that the size of the plant starts to get taller and taller, and your eye is actually taken to either side of this picture. The trees that are depicted at the very top of the pictures are not on this property. They're on a neighbor's property, but our eye has been taken from short plants up into the tall plants, and we've borrowed the neighbor's tree in our view. So in this way, we expand the look of our landscape. But we can do exactly the opposite and create an enclosure. In this particular case, we're using taller plants along a walkway in order to enclose a space and make it seem more private. In terms of color, you can go with a little heat with these chartreuse and orange and red plants, or cool it off with pastel colors. That's fine. I'm often asked, do you mix up color? And the truth is that in nature, there can be an absolute riot of color going on, depending on what the plant material is and what the context is. So these rules are made to be broken, in my opinion. But if you want something that is calming and uniform, then stick to either a cool or a hot palette as you pick your plants, as you select them. But don't forget that green is a color too. So you can be selecting plants not so much for their bloom color, but for the color of their foliage. And it can make a very compelling landscape. And certainly in the wintertime or in times when there isn't a heavy bloom, it will continue to make your garden look, look well. All right, so now we're going to match up the plant list that we developed with our microclimate plan that we made way back at the beginning of the talk. And what we're going to do now is we're going to see, okay, we're going to make sure that things are in the sun are in the places that have sun, things that need shade are in places that need shade, and we're going to start to move things around. Don't forget the hydrozones. So those are the colors that you see there. The red is very low, the yellow is low, and the blue is moderate. We're going to group the plants according to their water needs, and we're going to make sure that we place them at their size at maturity so that we have plenty of room for them. And here we've done that. By the way, look, the very, very low water plant is right along the driveway in this tiny little spot. Remember, that's where we had all that reflected heat. We need very low water plants there. We have the tree here, and under the tree, we have some low water and some moderate water plants. We have low water plants hedging the landscape. Now, how does this look with our rain garden? Well, with the rectangular rain garden we need to move the plants around a little bit. The plants here that are low water requiring, they really shouldn't be in the rain garden area. They need to be moved away. And maybe we move some of these plants like the number 2s that are up on the berms, or the 4 that's up on the berm. Maybe we put that down into where the rain garden area is. With the ovals, we're doing a little bit better, so that's good. And also with the cascades, we're doing pretty well. Maybe we want to move a couple of those 6s out of the way so that they are not in the basin. We could maybe swap out the 4 that's up on the berm for those 6s. And this is actually how garden designers do it. We move the plants around, we move the basins around, and so forth. So what are your next steps? Well, create that base plan, get started experimenting. Don't be afraid to plant big and bold. Apply for your rebates and make sure that you are gardening. So we have probably 5 minutes or so for questions. I am wondering if Andrea can come on.
Hello.
Hi, Andrea. Were there any questions?
Gosh, it got dark in here. Yes, there were quite a few questions. Let me see it's hard to round up the best of them. We have such an active group. We had some questions about, of course, the question always comes up about standing water and mosquitoes.
And the answer is?
Well, the water just the rain gardens work too well for us to have standing water. And in my experience, the older the rain gardens get, even though you're building the water table, the soil is getting spongier and has a higher water holding capacity. And also the plants are like little natural sump pumps that are also, soaking up that water. So the joke that we always say as designers is to get photos of our rain gardens actually full of water. We're running out in the rain to take pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And 72 hours, if you have water in your rain garden after 72 hours, there are things you can do. You can auger it, you can do all kinds of stuff.
Right.
But usually we don't have it for even a couple of hours after a rainstorm. So it is not an issue at all. Absolutely. One more question. We want to wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have some just new ones coming in. Love to hear ideas for shade-loving plants and plants to use under a redwood. I did recommend using the Cowscape website for that, because then you can just create your own miniature redwood woodland understory, which is what a wonderful wonderful treat you have to have that
Able to
kind of
work with
garden.
that. I think let's finish it up with the last question of, can I put a rain garden near a tree? And the answer is yes, your tree will be very, very happy. But definitely you want to be considerate of the roots of the tree. You want to stay outside of the drip line. And the drip line is the edge of the canopy of the tree. At least outside of it, it may have a lot of fibrous roots and you might have to go even further. But as long as you're outside that drip line, yes, your tree is going to be really, really, really happy that you gave it extra water. All right. Well, I want to be very conscious of our time, and I appreciate that you all were able to join us this evening. This is recorded, and you will be getting a link to be able to rewatch the workshop and also share it with your friends. I mean, that is what this is all about. We're here to learn. I love the Q&A. The Q&A will be shared. The chat can be shared. And this is an opportunity for us to really, learn from each other. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. You have a lot of things you can do on a Thursday night. And so we're really grateful that you joined us. The recording will be on the Valley Water website. And share it with your friends. Tell them about these workshops. The more the merrier. That's the only way to go. So thank you again and have a wonderful evening. Thank you to all the people who answered questions. Thanks, Andrea. Thank you, Valley Water. Thank you to all of our interpreters. Have a wonderful evening.